Okay, welcome to tutorial 5 in setting up the pension school model. Today we're going to look at, with our setup we've already got, we're going to look at how to add in a pension that Mr. Smith already has. So the first thing is I go up into the asset pane, check that I'm in setup mode here, and I'm going to select personal pension. So I'm going to set up a personal pension wrapper and define the investment strategy. I'm going to set it up in this occasion with a simple equity bond split. So continue there, and now here I've got my investment policy for my simple pension scheme. So there's 3 different asset classes I can invest in: a cash float, a bond fund, or a generic equity fund. But what I want to actually do here before I do any of that is add in a new asset class with a specific equity, and so I'm going to show how to do that. So if I select OK there, select No there, I've got here, I'll go back to show Mr. Smith, I've got here the personal pension with nothing in it. As I go to value, I can still see it's got nothing in terms of value. Select personal pension, I've got cash flow, bond fund, and generic equity. So what I'm going to do is firstly add in some values here to say what I've actually got in each of these. So my cash flow has, say, 5,000 in it. My bond fund, if I change quantity owned, and I'm going to put in that I own 100 units of this bond fund, which is £7,900, and I'm going to put in that I own 200 units of the equity fund. Okay, that's £20,000. So my total pension pot is now £32,000. I select back on that. Now what I want to do is I've for example got another asset class in here. I've got another specific equity in here, so I'm going to select equities, and I'm going to buy a specific share. And what I want to put in here is an established company with a high dividend yield. So I'm going to purchase £5,000 of that. Now because I'm in setup mode, it won't actually take any money out to purchase this. It will just put that asset into my pension scheme. So it's come up here and it's called value share. There's an email from the broker there saying there's a share purchase. I'm just going to change that to high yield. So now you can see I've got these different assets in my pension scheme, and I'm going to now do decide investment policy by right-clicking on the asset pane, and you can see here I've got my high yield share in here. So what I want to do for my investment policy is 10% in my cash flow, 20% in my bond fund. Then I'm going to split the remaining 70% between my generic equity and my high yield share. I'm not advocating this is a particularly sensible policy, but it just shows you how to set up the investment policy. Other things I can do with the investment policy, I can decide how often the rebalancing occurs. So here it's going to occur quarterly. I can look at what annual fees are, annual management charge, that's a percent. We'll come on to these things later, but that's a percentage charged each year, and a bid offer spread whenever I buy a new asset. And I can decide how rebalancing is done. So there's non-wait for specific instruction. Always invest cash the same way. Invest cash so as to target a given strategy. And I'm going to select now rebalance fund by selling assets to target a given strategy. So what this will mean is each 3 months, because it's done quarterly, the whole fund will be rebalanced to this asset allocation. So I select OK there. You can see the actual asset allocation I've got is quite different from that. But if I now allow myself to run forward, take it out of setup mode first, when I come up to 3 months, you will notice, as you see there, suddenly I've got about 10% cash flow, 20% bond fund, and 35% in each of these generic equities and the high yield share. So that's how my investment policies worked. So that shows you how you set up a personal pension scheme you already own. It works for ISAs, it will work exactly the same. The other thing we need to look at is, what about, we've already got a defined benefit pension scheme. So I'm going to say that Mrs. Smith here already has a defined benefit pension scheme which she's left the job and has a deferred right to. So just simply select there. I'm going to cancel that and go back into setup mode, because this is not a benefit scheme she's now joining, this is one she already owns. So select defined benefit, continue there, and name of scheme, so old job Mrs. Smith. Date of joining this job, obviously that must be a few years ago now, so that's 2004. Date of leaving, presume she left, say 3 years ago in the summer. She's now a deferred member with no salary linkage. We'll assume it's contracted out of the state pension scheme, as most schemes are. If you don't know, that's probably the best to default to. Fixed rate GMP revaluation, again, if you don't know, that's the best one to default to. Salary at date of leaving, we're going to say she's on 22,000 when she left. Accrual rate 60th is fairly standard. Normal retirement age 65, again fairly standard. And early retirement, late retirement factors, these, if you don't know what they are, the model comes set up with fairly standard factors. You'll notice there's no employee contribution here. That's because she's a deferred member of the scheme and she's no longer paying into the scheme. So that's basically set up a deferred pension for it, and it'll work out. You'll see here that she's been in the scheme slightly more than 5 years. Salary at the date of leaving 22,000. So that's broadly going to define how much pension she's eligible to receive. Now, if I right-click on this pension scheme and do request quotation, you can see you've accrued an income of 2,000. Now, that's about 1/12. She's been in the scheme for 5.5 years, 60th accrual, and she was on a salary of 22,000 when she left it. So that's broadly 5.5 over 60 times 22,000. So that's the amount of accrued pension. However, this would be reduced to £106 if it were drawn today. Well, she's only 28 years old, so she wouldn't take early retirement at that age. But it just shows how important it is to actually wait till you receive your pension. But that shows how easy it is to set up a deferred pension you already have in your system. And then you want to, before we start running forward again, you want to take it out of setup mode. Okay, so now we can see how to set up defined benefit pensions you already own, defined contribution pensions you already own. Works the same for ISAs and self-invested personal pensions.